knew pretty early, at least in my late teens, that I was suffering from depression. I didn't go into Christianity right away. I was seeking something different and seeking my power back, and I found that initially through sort of the New Age law of attraction.
All right. Hello, Miss Abby.
Hello, Charmaine.
Thank you for being here. And everybody, welcome to Dear Speak Conversations. And just the time that I get to talk with people who have a story to tell that is inspiring, and it includes God and issues with depression, anxiety, and just overcoming and living a day-to-day life, overcoming. And yeah. So this is my new friend Abby. Aggie. Do you say Aggie? Do I say it right?
Aggie, hard
Aggie.
G. Yep.
Okay. Hargy. Abby Aggie. Okay. So we've known each other maybe 2 months now, right? December, January, February. Yeah, well, we actually met on, back in October, I guess,
Right.
in the class. So anyway,
September.
yeah. Oh, was that September?
I
Wow.
think it started September.
Yeah, okay. So I just, after talking with Abby, we just realized, I realized that her story was very inspirational. And I just reached out to her, and she was very kind to accept to interview and share with all of you. Okay, so Abby, why don't we just start with you just telling the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited. I've seen your other interviews, and it's just like, I'm just really happy that you brought me on. So, my name is Abby Aggie, and I'm a psychologist by training and currently work as a consultant um, at a firm. But I also do business, sorry, not business, dating coaching.
That's
So,
a
a
business.
psychologist.
It's a big business.
So I'm in the industry business wise in terms of my 9 to 5, and then I also do dating coaching. So psychologist, consultant turned dating coach, and I help women who are looking for love attract and keep their dream man. And my focus right now is ambitious Black women over 30 because that was my story, and I feel like I can speak to that audience the best.
Oh, wow. Yes. I actually didn't know that you were doing a 9 to 5, so.
Yeah, so I have a full-time job and a baby, and I'm pregnant.
Yes, yeah, so that's a lot. As soon as she said that, I'm like, whoa, she's even busier than I thought. So 'cause I know you have a toddler, right?
Yes, he just turned 13 months, or yeah, he just turned 13 months.
Wow. And you're expecting and you're working. Okay, yeah, you wear all the hats and wear
Yep,
them very well, I might add.
thank
So
you.
okay, well, okay, so let's get into it. So you were talking to me about your struggles. One of the things I like to ask my interviewees is when you suffered from the depression, did you realize it? Because with my story, I didn't realize what was going on for years, for decades.
Ah.
So did you realize it or what? What were you thinking these feelings were from or these actions were from?
Yeah, so I mean, I did my undergraduate degree in psychology. I was 18 years old when I started, and
Wow.
yeah, like as I did my classes, as I learned about different psychology disorders, I saw myself in it right away. So I knew that
Oh,
I was depressed,
yeah. Oh,
and I
wow.
sought the help because I was taking abnormal psychology as a class. I'd actually written an essay on the benefits of psychotherapy over drug therapy for
Oh.
treating depression, and I used that essay to like bring it to my doctor and be like, I know I said this, but give me the drugs. And so I actually I didn't have, because at the time I was working part-time, 20 hours a week, and I had more than a full course load. I had 110% course load.
Oh,
And so I
wow.
just didn't have the time to do therapy. And I was commuting to campus like 2 hours each way.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, I've always been on 10. I'm a
Yeah.
very go,
Yeah.
go, go kind of
My
person.
goodness. Yeah.
And so I knew pretty early, at least in my late teens, that I was suffering from depression, and I sought treatment for it right away. I didn't seek the right kind of treatment for me. That's
Mhm.
another story, but it didn't go well for me being on that medication. And so after a few months, I ended up getting off that medication, and then have been in and out of therapy ever since. And my most recent therapist, I haven't seen her in a long time, but I actually learned a tip that if you are in therapy, you can ask your therapist, what are you being treated for? Because they have to put something for insurance purposes. And
Right.
so, out of curiosity, I was like, oh, what am I being treated for? And she said, generalized anxiety disorder, which was like mind blowing to me because the whole time I thought I was being treated for depression, but I was being treated for
Oh,
anxiety.
oh,
And
wow.
so, depression was what brought me to therapy, but anxiety is like sort of what we were treating.
Did you agree with that diagnosis?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like you could
I'm not
accept
a,
it, you when you
oh
thought about
yeah.
it? Yeah.
I'm not a clinical psychologist, so I try to stay away from trying to diagnose myself and other
Right.
people.
Oh,
But
okay.
definitely, yeah, I'm a very anxious person. I've always known that about myself.
Okay.
But to hear it as like generalized anxiety disorder was like, it felt like a big deal.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow. All right. So then my next question for you is, were you a Christian at this time?
No, absolutely not. So
Oh,
I grew up in a Christian household. I'm Nigerian. I was born there, and most of my family is still in Nigeria. And if anyone knows anything about Nigerians, is that they are very religious people.
okay. Yeah.
And so my family is Christian. Like everybody in my family pretty much will say that they're Christian. And they're just very religious as well. And so I grew up in a very religious home, but I was never brought up to have a relationship with Jesus. It was more of like a
Oh,
top down, here's an authority because God
yeah.
said so,
Yeah.
just do all the things that you are expected to do culturally.
Wow.
And I didn't have the kind of relationship with my parents where I could ask questions, which is why I became a psychologist. It's like, I want to be a scientist and ask
Oh,
questions and have my questions
interesting.
answered.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so I didn't have a relationship with God growing up, even though I went to church every single week until I was 18. I even taught Sunday school and I didn't believe in it.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, I wasn't a Christian at the time. I became a Christian just at this point, almost 4 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
walk us through. So you're married, but this is your, if I can ask, your second marriage,
Yes.
correct? So
Yes.
when you went into your first one, you did you take into that your anxiety, I guess, just or
It's a good question. Yeah, going into my first marriage, I mean, I've always just been like I said, I'm on 10. I'm an anxious person doing. What's funny is today's sermon in our church was about Mary and Martha, and I was like, "Oh God, you're
oh
attacking
wow,
me,"
yeah.
because I know I'm Martha. I know I'm that person who's out
You
in the
do.
kitchen trying to do and
Yeah,
just be in the presence of Jesus.
yeah.
And so I've always been that person who's always like trying to strive and do. And in my first marriage, I definitely brought that into it. And I think I definitely brought that low self esteem that often comes with the high levels of anxiety, the perfectionism, the need to
Mhm.
keep up appearances, all of those things definitely played into my first marriage.
Okay. Okay, and then how did you, so you, that wasn't such a great, you ended up dissolving that marriage, correct? Or,
Right.
yeah, did your anxiety, did any of that have to do with that or play a part in it or it was more,
Um, I would say the depression definitely did have to do with it in a way. So that was definitely the darkest period of my life. I can say that without a doubt. That marriage, that relationship was a dark time for me. And I learned afterward through going to therapy that it was emotionally abusive. And so that was not a good time for me for sure. And so would I say that anxiety was part of it? maybe a little bit, but I think a lot of it was just the gaslighting in that relationship too. So it's a combination of things. Like I didn't trust myself already, and I had all this anxiety about life in general and about myself. And so I looked to my then husband to sort of validate me.
I see.
And when you look to someone who has narcissistic tendencies to validate you, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And I allowed him to define my reality for a very long time.
I see. Oh, okay. All right. But you got out of that. And then once you got out, how was your mental health and your relationship with God?
Good question. So I always say I thank God for that marriage and the fact that I was in it because it drove me closer to him.
Hmm.
So in that marriage, I saw what the absence of God looked like, and I was like, I
Oh,
don't want any parts of this.
wow. Wow.
And it was in seeing the absence of God in my marriage and in this person that made me run in the direction of God, looking for something different.
Oh,
And I would say that my mental health vastly improved. So, after I left him, even before I filed for divorce, but when I made the decision to leave him, people would comment like, "Oh, Abby, you're glowing. Oh, Abby, you look so much happier now." And it was just so fascinating to me to see that, like, you know, people recognize when something is off with you. What was challenging for me was I actually moved countries. So I'm from Canada, and um, most of my not my immediate family is in Canada. Most of my family's in Nigeria, but my parents, my siblings, one of my cousins, and my aunties is in Canada. And my whole network was in the Toronto area. And so when I moved to Michigan to go to school, and I married my husband, my then husband, um, I didn't know anybody, and nobody knew me. So there, a lot had shifted about my demeanor, but there was
yeah.
nobody to notice because
Be
no one had
fair.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
right, because nobody knew who I was before I met him, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
I
Oh,
was very unhappy. And the people who knew me back home, when I would come back to visit, noticed the change. But the people who knew me in that context wouldn't have known anything. I gained 50 pounds, I believe, in that relationship.
wow.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, and I typically gain weight when I'm really unhappy just because I'm getting my comfort from food. And so between the weight gain and the uh, what's the word? Basically isolating myself from friends and family, and all of those things were happening in that relationship. And then when I left him, I lost most of the weight, and if not all of the weight. No, I think I lost about 40 pounds in that relationship after it ended. And I was just happier. I had my joy back, and I was no longer being sucked by an energy vampire. So like people
Yeah.
could notice that my demeanor had changed. And I didn't go into Christianity right away. I was seeking something different and seeking my power back. And I found that initially through sort of the new age law of attraction kind of mindset. And so I started off there. And then over the course of the next couple of years, came back to Jesus.
Oh, amen. Can you walk us through that a little bit? What took you back to him? It was just kind of that looking, because I believe, when we're searching, like the Bible says, we seek for him and search for him. We'll find him, and he's
Uh-huh.
always going after us. So can you walk through that a little bit about?
Yeah. So it started off with me really just trying to get my power back and trying to find ways to make my ex want me back and all those certain things, and like try to manifest my next man and all those things. And the more that I dove into sort of the law of attraction teachings, the more I felt like something was missing, and it felt like kind of empty in a lot of ways. And I knew something was it just didn't feel right with my spirit. And I ended up meeting my now husband in November 2019. And at the time, I would have called myself an atheist, but like started to realize that I was spiritual and I was in the universe a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and after we met, I had an epiphany of like, well, when I say the universe, do I just mean God? And I just started to see Christians in my life who had a certain light about them that I was like, why are they so peaceful? What is it about them that draws me to them? And I wanted more of that. And so Thanksgiving happened in the United States. It's late November. In Canada, it's in October. But Thanksgiving happened in the US, and I went back to Canada to visit my family. And I would just said randomly to my parents, like, hey, can I go to church with you this weekend? My parents
Oh,
were
that's right,
like,
because they were still going to church and okay,
yeah,
yeah,
my parents are very like they're very much in the church community.
yeah.
And they were just shocked because like I stopped going to church like, I don't know, 15 years prior.
Wow.
And I was very not just like not a Christian, but like very anti-Christian. I was very much like vocally like this doesn't make any sense, like this isn't logical, this isn't
Yeah.
scientific, and blah blah blah. And something told me to go to church with them, and my sister ended up joining too, and she hadn't gone to church in a long time either. So that was really cool to see. And basically, I decided to read the Bible for the first time because even though I had grown up in the church, I had never read the Bible from cover to cover.
Wow.
I just read like stories here and there. And when I thought about it, I'm like, I'm a huge fan of Harry Potter. And I read the entire series from beginning to end. I would
Wow.
never, yeah, I would never read a chapter here and there or even a book randomly and be like, I read the series. So, like, how can I claim to know what the Bible says if I haven't read it from cover to cover?
Oh, wow.
So, I decided to get on the YouVersion app and read the chronological 1 year Bible. And when I came back to Michigan after the Christmas holidays, I'd actually asked a friend, did you find a church? Because this friend I was a grad student at the time, and this friend had joined my lab maybe 2 years prior. And when she came to the lab, she came from North Carolina, and she was like, hey, Abby, do you know any churches? And I was like, ew, no, I don't do that.
Yeah.
And so, I came back January 2020, like, hey, did you end up finding a church? And she said, yeah, you want to come with me? So I started going to church with her, I think in January 2020. And just every week, the pastor just spoke to my heart. And he was a
Wow.
former science teacher, I believe. So he did a really good job of being able to explain how science and the Bible align.
Wow.
And
Wow, that was just for you, girl.
it was
You
just
know
for me,
that. Oh
literally.
my
It was
goodness. That's
exactly what I needed.
amazing.
This pastor ended up marrying me and my husband. So
Oh,
everything is lined up.
wow.
And yeah, and so I ended up going to the church until COVID shut everything down. And they
Okay.
were already online at the time. They
Yeah.
had been putting their sermons on YouTube for years. And so it just was a natural transition to go online and watch their sermons. And every week they would do a call to Jesus, like, are you going to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior? And I just couldn't make the leap yet.
Yeah.
It felt like, I don't know. And things were going on with my then boyfriend, who's now my husband, where I was still in that anxious space, like my anxious attachment style and
Yeah.
struggling with the relationship and my own personal anxiety that had nothing to do with him. And I ended up breaking up with him. And my therapist was like, Abby, what are you doing? And I realized, okay, like I'm still not completely healed yet from my past marriage and my past relationships. I still have work to do. I need to go deeper into figuring out what, God. And so I ended up just praying for the first time in years and was like, okay, Jesus, I'll believe in you if you just show me a sign, and I'll believe in you.
Yeah.
And like literally, as soon as I finished praying, I saw my first sign, which made complete sense for me. It might not make sense for anybody else. And the next day, I saw my second sign. And I was like, all right, okay, I believe in you. And uh, yeah, that's basically how I became a Christian. Was I just asked God to show me that He's real,
Yeah.
and I'll believe. And He showed me with like instantaneously. So I got lucky there, I guess.
I love that. That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And so from there, you were just on the road, to Christianity, to God, a relationship and all of that, right?
Absolutely. I've been just really fortunate to have a wonderful community wherever I've gone. So we moved to Maryland. We live there now. And
Okay.
at one point we were in Virginia for a little bit. And so just like every church we've gone to has been super welcoming. And, I really do prioritize my relationship with God because one, it's transformed my life. And two, I've seen the effect it's had on other people around me. And I'm just so grateful for that. And I wouldn't be with my husband if it wasn't for God. Like He really brought us together in a special way. So I
Yes.
can't stress enough how important it is to seek God first.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. Okay. So my other question was usually is what's your turning point, but you just you went over all of that. that was beautiful. And
Yeah, the
it's
turning point was really the first marriage, was realizing like this is what the absence of God looks
like,
like. I do not like it. I do not want any more of this. And what can I do differently? Because I didn't want to end up in the same kind of relationship again.
yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. But then you said you broke up with your husband, your now
Yeah.
husband. So how did you, then what happened? Like so you sought God after that and said, okay, you started praying and stuff. What happened? Did he tell you, okay, get back with him or what?
What's crazy? So my husband at the time was also a non-believer,
Okay.
also an atheist, but also on a spiritual journey. And he had been on a spiritual journey, sort of seeking questions about God for like almost 20 years. So it's not like I
Oh,
came in and like, changed his mind. He was
right.
on his own journey of
Yeah.
seeking. And what's crazy when I say put God first, because every time I put God first, he brought me and my husband closer together. And I do believe that if I put God first and we were pushed apart, then that's not my person. But every time I put God first, he brought us closer together, which made me realize, okay, this is probably my person. And so that first sign that I got from Jesus, I'm assuming it's a sign, I don't know. But when I finished praying, I was like, give me a sign. The first thing that I saw was, Abby, you need to be single for the next 3 months. And so,
Oh,
again, this was March, I think. It might have been February 2020. And I decided to be single for the next 3 months. And my husband actually reached out to me and was like, do you want to talk about what happened? And I was like, sure, let's talk about it. And so we ended up meeting in person to talk about, what went on in our relationship and why it ended, and came to an understanding. And I realized in that conversation, I made a huge mistake. I really messed up. And we were gonna meet again the following week. And then there was all these announcements about COVID, and
okay.
everyone was being told to go home. Like a lot of the announcements from Canada were like, Canadians come home if you're out abroad.
Oh,
And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to Canada. Do you want to meet on my like before I go? And he said, sure. So on my drive up to Canada, I actually met him for breakfast. And in that conversation, it was just like, a regular conversation, just like almost like two friends hanging out. It was nothing romantic. But
yeah.
I remember thinking, oh man, like he's still so hot.
I love it.
And I'd asked him in that conversation, like, what does he think about soulmates? Just like as a question. And
Yeah,
he talked about his thoughts on soulmates, but he didn't ask me back what I thought.
yeah.
And then when I got home, I had a text from him being like, I feel like I missed an opportunity here. Like, I want to know what you think about soulmates. And so I ended up calling him that night and we talked about it. And he was like, where can we go? Like, is there any hope for us again? And I
Well,
told him, like, I can't explain it, but God told me to be single for the next 3 months.
okay. This was
And
the beginning of the 3 months?
yes, this is like the first like couple of days. I think
Oh,
maybe, yeah, February, March, April, May. Yeah, it would have been like the first week or two of the three
okay.
months. And I was like, I need to be single until the end of May. But if you're still like, feel free to date other people. If you're
Yeah.
still free single in the next
Ah,
3 months, then come
oh
back,
my
and you're
goodness.
still interested, come back and talk to me. And sure enough, the whole world shut down completely and he couldn't date
Hey,
anybody.
anybody? Don't you love how God works? I love that. He's his thing where he has just everything in place and we think things are going crazy and it's like, oh no, I gotta
Right.
pass. I gotta pass.
I couldn't have planned that,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, his ways are not
So
our ways. Yeah.
exactly. And so now I'm in Canada, I'm in Toronto, and he's in Michigan. And we just like, we spent a lot of time over Netflix party. I think that was big back in 2020. And, just WhatsApp video calls. And we would spend time basically as friends. And it essentially was what we should have done from the beginning of our relationship. The beginning of our relationship, I think we were both trying to impress each other.
Yeah.
And I think our spirits knew this person is the person, but something was not quite right.
Right, right,
And through this period of singleness, I got to know him as a friend without the pressure
right,
of like trying to impress each other.
right.
And when I came back to Michigan, we started hanging out in person. We were each other's bubble for the COVID,
Oh,
lockdowns.
oh, okay.
Um, and we just would hang out. And before my 3 months was up, he asked if he could kiss me, and I said yes. And then the next time that I saw him, the 3 months were up, but he didn't ask me on a date, and I was really disappointed by that. But I also thought,
Yeah.
like, okay, God has already sent me, God has shown me what life could be like with the right kind of person.
Oh,
And God
okay.
has shown me what a good man looks like. And more of this, please. If it's not this guy, it'll be
Right.
somebody else. And I just
Right.
trusted God that, he would bring me my right
Oh,
person. It didn't have to be this particular person.
so it really
And
built your faith.
100%, 100%. Because
Wow.
I just knew that like I felt like deep down this is my person, but it
Yeah.
wasn't quite right. There was certain aspects that weren't quite right. So for example, my husband, I know now, is a nerd. But when I met him, he looks like an action figure. Like he's very hot. And so in my brain, I'm like, this hot guy is just not into me. Now in hindsight, I know this nerd is nervous to talk to me.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so
Okay.
that's where we weren't quite lining up.
Right.
And
Right.
um, he sees himself as a nerd, like Lord of the Rings. He's a physicist, he's very nerdy. But
Oh,
I saw him at the time as like this bodybuilder type hot guy.
right.
And so that's
Right.
how I was interpreting his actions.
Right. Oh,
And so,
wow.
yeah, like when that 3 months came up and he didn't ask me out, I just straight up asked him, like, hey, I came over to his place and we were gonna make banana bread and we're gonna watch a movie. And I said, I came over and he tried to kiss me. And I
Okay.
was like, I swerved him. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't kiss my friends. What's going on here?
Okay. Oh, I like that. I don't kiss my friends. What's going on?
Right. I was like, I don't kiss my
Okay.
friends.
I'm gonna put that
And
in the
so
description for everybody to remember. So I like that.
and he admitted like he had thought about it a lot. And at the time, I want to say I was in my third year, maybe my fourth year of graduate school. I can't remember
Okay.
exactly, but I
Okay.
was on the job market and I had already interviewed at like in Seattle and different places.
Oh,
And so he was like, because you're on the job market, I don't know where you're going to end up. And at the time, he was a professor. So just it's really hard when you're both in academia trying to
right.
both get jobs. So he
Yeah.
was thinking like far, far into the future of like, I don't know where you're going to end up in the country. I don't know if there's any point in dating, if you're going to move across the country. And I was like, hold
Oh,
on, sir. I
yeah.
was just thinking about the next like week and a half. Like I'm
Yeah.
not thinking
Yeah.
about 6 months
Yeah.
from now.
Right.
Like I
Yeah.
don't even know if I want to date you 6 months from now.
Right.
Like I just
Exactly.
and
Oh
so
my
I was like,
goodness.
you know what? It's fine. Like, don't worry about it. We can just be friends. That's cool. And it was like, I think part of him was like, I don't like that she was too cool with, me not wanting to date
You're
her.
right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And when I was leaving his apartment, he wouldn't like he kept like I had my window down, or I think he had my door open for my car, and he wouldn't close the door. He kept saying, I don't want you to go because why do I feel like this is the last time I'm gonna see you?
Oh.
And I was like, I don't know. And I was like, maybe I'll see you, maybe I won't. And he was like,
Wow. I'm loving the confidence, all this new, because you
I
went
was
from one thing to another. I love
I
it.
was just so certain that God had someone for me. And I was like, the guy for
Right.
me is going
Right.
to be certain about me. I don't have to
Yeah.
chase him down. I don't have to beg him. He's going to know. And I
Okay.
told him, like, I'm going to be dating other people. And if I have time to hang out with you, then sure, we can hang out. And he was like, oh, he's like, I don't like the sound of that. And I was like,
You
that's
had
too
just
bad.
bursted his bubble all over the place.
And I think if I had reacted of like, oh no, like please date me, it would have been very
Right.
different energy. But I came in
Yeah.
like really sure of myself of like,
Yes.
I'm ready
Confident.
now to find a person. I've gone through therapy. I'm ready for my next partner. The next time I get into a relationship, I knew that's going to be my husband. I'm not going to be someone's girlfriend just to be their girlfriend. I just felt really sure that God had someone for me. And if it's not this guy, it'll be someone else. And I need to make room for that person.
I love it. Yeah. Okay. Keep going. Cause
And
he knew. Cause he's probably like, who is this woman?
to be clear, I was a little bit upset. Like when he told me that, I
Oh,
excused myself and went to the bathroom and had a little bit of like okay,
oh,
disappointed, really sad.
yeah.
And I just like connected with God in that moment, like, okay, God, I trust you. It's
Yeah.
gonna be okay. And when I
Whoa.
came out, I was okay. And you know, I think that showed with him that like, oh, she's not like freaking out about this.
Right.
And so I got home and I have a long rant with my sisters. We have a group chat. And with my sisters, I was just like, this guy wasted my time. I was super cool with him. And in
I love it.
private,
Yeah.
I was
You need
texting
your
my sister.
outlet. Yeah. Your outlet.
Exactly. Texting my
Yeah.
therapist, like,
Yeah.
how dare he?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And the next
Wow.
day, I was okay again. I prayed, I connected with God, and I was just like, okay, I trust that whatever God has for me is for me. And at the time, I was like 30, I think I was turning 31 years old.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 2020. I was about to turn 31 in a month or so or two. And I was just like, I had the whole world at my feet. Like
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was missing out on something major. It was just like, okay, now I know what's out there and what's possible for me. This is awesome. And while I was
Wow.
praying, because I used to meditate and pray a lot, like I would meditate for like 15 minutes. And while I was doing my meditation, he texted me a couple of times. And so during my meditation, he texted me, and basically it was this long text about how he made a mistake and he wants to date me if I want to give him another chance, and basically all the things I wanted to hear. And I was
Right,
like,
right, right, right.
okay.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my
So
goodness.
that's how we ended up getting back together. Was
Oh,
again, it was just me connecting with God and all that happening. And of course, our relationship was just beautiful from the beginning. Like he's just a wonderful person, and dating him was awesome. And it was probably around June when we really decided to be official. And then by August, I'd gotten to a point in the 1 year Bible where I learned about being equally yoked.
okay.
And I was like,
Okay.
oh no, I'm dating a guy who doesn't believe in God. What am I doing?
All right.
And so I sought a lot of advice from seasoned Christians that I knew, whether it was my parents, friends, pastors, my therapist, everyone, just trying to figure out what to do. And I got a lot of different advice, but the general trend was if things are great, don't try to mess it up, just stick with it. And it didn't sit right with me. I kept feeling like, I want to be with someone who loves Jesus as much as I do. And I want to be with someone who can lead me in my faith. And
Mhm.
I know that my husband is meant to be a Christian, and I'm not going to sit around waiting for him to become one. Maybe he's just not my person. And so that's another avenue where I had to learn how to trust God and listen to God's voice on this, because God
Mm.
really led me to stick it out and wait, because like I said, I'm a very anxious person. If you're familiar with the fight or flight response,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm a flight. I'm a
Oh.
flight risk. I like to run and do. And if the first sign of trouble, I'm out of here.
Yeah, okay.
And so I
Flight
had to,
risk. Yeah.
yes. And so one of my pastors was able to share with me a verse from Psalm, I want to say 23 or 19. I forget which one,
Okay.
but it's um, there's two passages. The one was the Lord is my shepherd, and
Mhm.
in that passage David says he makes me lie down. And so the pastor was like, if you're not going to stop moving, God's going to make you stop moving.
Oh, okay. All right. I like
And then
that.
the and the
Yes, he
other
does.
one, yes, the other one was peace and be still. And so I had to learn how to practice stillness. And it really lined up with my therapy at the time, because at the time I was learning that if I overuse my flight response, the way to counteract that is to freeze and learn how to not move. And so I had to
Wow.
learn how to freeze. And it just, everything was just like lining up to make me not have to decide things in my own power, but just wait until I got confirmation from God on everything.
Okay.
I
Wow.
know
This,
that was a lot.
wow, it was like, I feel like I'm in therapy with you and I'm just excited because this is so rich. This is so good. Oh my
Thank you.
goodness. And so what happened to him? The Lord was working on his heart, obviously, at
A
the same
hundred
time.
percent. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like before we had met, my husband, his name is Eli, by the way. So
Okay.
Eli was living in an apartment where someone's car had broken down, and he gave that person the jump start. And that person happened to be a pastor who was like one of his neighbors. And so Seventh Day Adventist pastor. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah. And so they became friends. And so what was
my
crazy
goodness.
was I was able to talk to this pastor who knew Eli before I met him, and was able to like assure me that like he's not just doing this because he's trying to impress me. He's been searching and having these questions for a long time, and he's on a spiritual journey.
Oh,
And so I thought about this question of what does it mean to be equally yoked? Because I'm a new Christian and
right.
he's a non-Christian, but are we equally yoked? Because ultimately, I said, oh, I forgot about this part. Back in
Okay.
April, so
Yes.
still peak COVID, April 2020, I had gone off the grid for a week because God put it on my heart to not be on, not
Right.
text anybody, not watch
Okay.
TV, not
Okay.
be on the internet. So
Okay.
I literally just spent the week meditating, and that was it.
Okay.
And during the meditation, I got the message to invite Eli to my church. And so I actually invited him to my church in April. And he was like all about it. He was like, yeah, absolutely. And so he had been attending
Wow.
church with me since April. So he's attending church with me. We went to 3 Bible studies together, and we would basically attend church together and then like talk about it after
Yeah.
and go to these Bible studies. And we were always talking about our about faith and God and meaning of life. Like he's a physicist, so he's always thinking about the universe, and I'm a
Right.
psychologist and thinking about people. And so we have these really cool conversations about science, both from a people's perspective and a universe perspective,
Yeah.
and how it relates to just broader questions of humanity and God. And so, with all of that in mind, it's like, okay, well, I would rather have somebody who doesn't know he's a Christian yet, but he's seeking,
Yeah.
compared to someone who says he's a Christian
And
and doesn't do any of the things that he should be doing.
yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. This story is so, I mean, this is beyond rich, you know? So then he accepted Christ at some point
Yeah, it
before
took
you
a few
got
more
married?
months before
Before,
we got married, before we
okay.
got engaged. So, like, literally,
Oh, okay.
I was ready to break up with him at the drop of a hat.
Oh,
Like I said, I really trusted God with this, and I was like just say the word and I'll break up with him. Like I would text
oh,
myself like how I feel on a scale from 0 to 100, where 0 is 100% he's not my person, and 100 is 100% he is my person. And there were times when I would text myself 1 or like 0.5. Like I was so close to breaking
wow.
up with him at any given
Wow.
moment. And then something would happen where we would be brought closer together. So I'll give you an example. He came over to my apartment and we were having an amazing time. I think we cooked together or something. And I just remember having so much fun. And then like my heart got heavy all of a sudden, like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to break up with him.
Oh,
And this was like we've been dating for months at this point, like exclusively. And I just suddenly felt so sad. Like I'm gonna have to break up with him when I just had so much fun. I'm having so much fun with him. And he was in the middle of talking to me when I decided to close my eyes and just connect with God. And I was like, I know this is gonna look crazy, but I'm just gonna do it. And so I closed my eyes and was trying to like center myself and align with God. And when I opened my eyes, his eyes were also closed and he was doing the same thing. And when he opened his eyes again, he was like, do you want to pray? And so he invited me to pray for the first time in that moment. As what I'm saying, like every single, like when I say, like I have it in my Instagram bio, Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God, because
oh,
literally
oh,
every single time I seek
yeah,
God, it just works out. And every time I went to God, he brought us closer together in some way that made me think, okay, let me keep giving this another chance. And so he had his own moments and his own journey and came to Christ, I want to say maybe November, December 2020. And I will say that one of the challenges of our dating relationship that also made me question, like, why am I dating a non Christian, is the sexual sin part of it.
yeah,
And it was really hard. Like he was very open to um, leaving sex off the table until marriage. He was very much like, whatever you want is fine. The problem was because he didn't have his own personal conviction about it. If I pushed him to,
yeah,
he would do it
yeah,
too. And so
yeah,
there were times when I would push him and then we do it. And I would be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
yeah, yeah.
And
Been there, yeah.
so we ended up having to create these boundaries with his pastor friend who did a Bible study with us. And the three of us together came together and were like, what are we going
Oh,
to do to not do this anymore?
yeah.
So we read a book by Elizabeth, I forget what it was called. It was like, ooh, Passion and Purity or something like that.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm gonna have to
So
look that up, put it in a link.
yeah, and she's also Seventh Day Adventist. I know you are as well.
Okay,
Um,
yeah,
so we're not, but
yeah.
we
You
yeah.
love the
So
Lord, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So we read Passion and Purity together. And with this pastor, we came to the agreement that we were not going to be alone in a room together
Mm,
um, unless we were not touching. So, like, if we were alone in the room together, we couldn't kiss. The only time we would kiss in public is if the only time we would kiss is if we were in public. And so that
okay,
also allowed us to establish these firm physical boundaries where we wouldn't be tempted. We also had a rule of no late night dates. So, you're not staying over at my place till 8 o'clock p.m. or 10 p.m. or whatever. Like, you're going to go home in the middle of the day.
yeah,
So we're not
okay.
tempted to stay over at each other's places overnight because he lived about over an hour away from me. So that
Oh,
was a little bit
wow,
tough.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Where, we drive over an hour, commute over an hour to see each other, and then we go, oh, well, I'll just stay over till tomorrow and
right,
it's fine.
right.
So we had to put up these very strong boundaries. And in doing so, it gave us both a lot of clarity because now we didn't have that physical aspect that was like clouding our judgment.
Mm.
And he came to Christ, I want to say December or so. And then in March, he proposed. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I think at that point, we both knew, like, I think by January, I really knew, like, okay, this is the person because that whole time that things were not quite moving in the direction of God, where it was like we're both going to Bible study, we're both really seeking, but we're still doing this thing that I know we're not really supposed to do. Something didn't feel right with me, and so it didn't feel right with him completely. And when that came off the table for real, and we were like very strict about it, it made me feel more confident that like, oh, we can go through hard things together, and we can both do,
Wow, yeah,
honor God together in our
yeah.
relationship.
Wow. I'm just blown away. I'm sorry by your story because that's something that some couples don't get to experience, like going through hard times together when it comes to honoring God, in your actions. And
Yes.
that's a great thing because you're learning how to go through hard times together and honoring God together. That's just amazing that
Yeah.
God allowed that. Boy, he took you guys through a really great path. So
It's been really amazing.
when did you get engaged? How long was it that
So we got
after?
engaged in March 2021. So
Oh, okay.
we had started dating for real like June 2020, but I had known him for like 7 months prior to that. So the 7 months prior were the times when I broke up with him and then we were friends for a while. And
Yeah.
then in June is when we really were like, okay, let's do this seriously and decided to be exclusive and date just each other. And then by March, we were engaged. And by August that same year, we were married.
You're married. Oh my
Yeah, we just engaged for 4.5 months.
goodness. Okay. Hey. Wow.
When
So
you know, you know.
yeah, exactly. That's such a journey from your anxiety, depression to not just not just to him, but also to just feeling so confident that you were ready to give him up and anything else that wasn't aligned with God. And
Yes.
even though, you had your chat sessions with your sisters and stuff, because we're still human and the Lord knows that, but he's waiting for us to sacrifice our feelings, because it's,
Yeah.
our faith over our feelings. And that is so inspiring, Abby. I love your
Thank you.
story.
It
Wow.
really is amazing thinking about like how much trusting God eliminates anxiety because you just
Yeah.
know that there's somebody out there who cares about you, who knows all about you, who wants what's best for you, and has the power to make what's best for you happen. And so it's like, why am I worrying when God has it, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay, I love this. Thank you. So what do you have, man? I think you've said everything, but my usual question I like to ask my interviewees is, what one thing would you leave with the audience? Or
I mean, well, two things.
yeah.
One is definitely seek God first,
Mhm.
period. Like
Mhm.
literally seek God wherever you are. And I have a video about this on my YouTube channel as
Okay.
well. I talk about like the importance of seeking God wherever you are because I think I didn't just seek God as a Christian. I sought God as an atheist, right? When I
Right.
was coming out of my last marriage, I was an atheist and I still was like, there's something more here. What is it? And how can I understand it better? I
Mhm.
sought God as a new ager. I was looking to be in alignment. I didn't know with what, but I just wanted to be in alignment. And I learned how to meditate and just notice how I felt in my body about things and when things didn't feel right. And then as a Christian, I started to realize, okay, like God has there's a book that I can read that will tell me God's character and I can be in alignment with that and try to be more like that. And God has told me what he wants for my life. So just wherever you are, no matter what you believe, figure out like what does it mean to seek God for you? What does that look like? And move in that direction because that's going to get you where you need to go. And then the second thing that I would leave with the audience is to focus on the things that are within your control.
Woo.
As a psychologist,
Yeah.
I study people and I research people.
Yeah.
And my entire life, I was a determinist, which means that I used to believe that all things are determined, predetermined. You have no free will.
Mm.
I just believe that if we had all the information to put in our statistical models. If I could
Yeah,
just make a regression equation to predict human
yeah,
behavior, I
yeah.
could predict it all because there's no such thing as free will. And that's really disempowering because when you feel like there's nothing in your control, then you don't do anything to make your life different. And so I think one of the big mindset shifts I had to have was realizing that yes, there are some things that are not in my control, but
Mhm.
there are also a lot of things that are within my control. And let me focus on that so that I can actually improve my life. And that was the best decision I could have ever made because my life is like completely 180 from what it was just 5 years ago.
Wow, that's so amazing. I mean, congratulations on your journey and on your, oh, wait, and so you said you talked about your business that help 30 plus women of color. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I have my YouTube channel and my Instagram page where I just give general sort of dating and life advice to level up because I definitely had like a major level up, journey. And a lot of it was based on like my research, but also other people's research and also just going to therapy. And so this is just like evidence-based practices to have your level up because as much as anyone can tell you do X, Y, and Z. There's certain things that I feel like I had to do to understand why I had to do those things. Like anybody can tell you, don't have sex before marriage, but like why? Why not? Like I think that was something that was missing from my upbringing was the explanation of the wisdom behind certain things. And so I share all that for free on my YouTube and Instagram, but then I also coach women. And so if there are women out there who want to find their person, who want to have their level up journey and their transformation to meet their person, then that's what I do as well.
All right. Well, lastly, you're so busy and you're having a baby and you have a little one. What do you like to do for fun?
I thought about this a lot, and I'm like, I'm
Do
a
you?
doer. I'm a Martha. I literally for fun will do personal development and business coaching stuff.
Oh,
But
okay, yeah.
lately I've been playing Candy Crush. I'm
Oh,
on like level 800 or
yeah.
something
Oh,
crazy.
wow. I don't even know, but that sounds high. So,
I've only been playing it for like a month, so it's a little high.
wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much for this very rich conversation. You covered a lot
Thank
and
you.
it was very inspiring as I'm just sitting here in awe. So thank you. You know how you think you know something and then about a person, you know a little bit about the story. You kind of blew me away. You just kind of
Um,
took it to a whole nother like, whoa, okay, I did it. Yeah, so I love it. And
Thank you.
Praise God for you and your family. I
Yes.
bless you and your family
Thank
and
you. And
yeah,
God bless you in this,
thank you.
this podcast, YouTube channel.
Thank
Like I'm so excited
you.
for where it's gonna go.
Thank you. Same here for you. All right. Well, thank you. I'm not going to hold you too much longer. Get you back to your family. You take care of yourself, and we'll talk again soon. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.